Hello everyone. Welcome. Happy Monday. How are we all doing? Let me know. Great to see so many of you here already. And quick shout out straight away to Solange Pierre, who's a new teacher joining us. Welcome. I see Krista is here and Carrie and Rachel Krista asked about the music. So all the music that I use in the intros to these shows are from artlist.io. Artlist.io. If you're looking for any of it, I just choose different selections based on different moods, but it is royalty free. So I pay for Artlist, but it can be used on YouTube. So that's why we use that service, and I love it. If you're looking for music for streaming and that kind of thing, it is great for that. Emily, welcome. Liana, great to see you here. Feel like I maybe haven't seen you for a while. That's awesome to see you. And Lee and Naptime Seamstress, one of the first ones here. Well done. First one to comment anyway, which I love. Now, Lee and Naptime Seamstress were asking about the time. So just to clarify, for those of you in the US and Canada, most of you, sprung forward already, right? You did the daylight savings time already last week. And over a week ago. We don't do it until next weekend, which is why this show appears to be an hour different in time. It's not, it's the same time for me. I haven't changed the time. There's just a 2-week period where we're out of sync because for some reason the world couldn't decide which day to do daylight savings on and make all of our lives simpler in the future. Maybe they didn't anticipate YouTube shows. But anyway, that's the crack. That's why that's like confusing at this time of year, and I have to double check every time zone calculation I do, triple, quadruple check it, and some things still are glitchy at this time. Next week, we will have sprung forward, so we will be back in sync with you at the usual gap in time. Hope that makes sense. Liz, hello. Over to Ontario. Great to see you here. First Monday of spring, indeed. I love that. And it's actually springy over here. So we've been having a lovely week, lovely weekend. So everyone was rejoicing here in Ireland because it was Paddy's Day last week, which you may know is always fun, and that's always a bank holiday. But this year the government gave everyone an extra bank holiday, which was a pain for employers, but fun for everyone else. So we were off for 4 days officially. Now, I was still working a bit, but it did mean everyone was super chipper and extra happy that we got 4 beautiful days. Just astounding. Such good luck. So yeah, it feels springy. There's daffodils everywhere in Dublin. I've been planting things in the garden. I painted my fence. Lots of fun stuff going on. Rainy season over in Trinidad. Yes, very different story indeed. But then it is always rainy season here. So I guarantee you our rain will be back very soon. But I know it's not the same as your rain. Okay, so let me know how you're doing today. Just a brief update on the show and a few special notes for you. First of all, I have a parent webinar in an hour at 5 p.m. for me. So that means we're going to skip the warm-up section again like we did last week, but it will be back next week because I've nothing on at 5 next week. So thanks for staying with me. It keeps things interesting, right? Keeps us on our toes, depending what we're doing each week. So we'll be doing the news and the main topic and the Ask Me Anything section at the end. So if you have a question about anything, just type it in. Write question at the start so I can easily search for it later. That's really helpful. And then I'll be happy to answer anything you want at the end. So that can be on any topic. Today's topic is obviously rote teaching, but that can be about anything that comes up in your brain, pops out of your brain during the show. Carrie, I can't share the link here because it's only for members, but I'll tell you where to find it. So if you go either to the VMT Clubhouse or to the forums, it's in both places. And if you have any issues with that, just let me know and I can send it through to you. But you need to go to one of those spots because I can't share the Zoom link here. Anyway, that webinar is just for parents, so it's an interesting experiment. We'll see how it goes. One more note before we hit the go button, which is I wanted to especially note that we have our Turbo Boost coming up because it's in 3 weeks. So if you've been like, I mean to get a ticket for that every time she says it, do it now because it's in 3 weeks. It's going to be here before you know it. And it's going to be so good. It's so good. If you haven't seen already, we added an extra Q&A with Fred Karpov. He's graciously agreed to come on just to do Q&A one of the evenings. So it's now even more wonderful. It was already great, but all the details are on that page. Just wanted to shout it out, say it now, because it's coming up so soon and you're watching live. All right, with that being said, time for you to hit the like button and us to all hear the pop, 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 pop. Here we go. Hey beautiful teachers, and welcome to your weekly show on YouTube. This is the Vibrant Music Teacher Chat, and this is where we talk about all things music teaching. Today we're discussing rote teaching, and if it has a bad name in your mind, don't worry. It's not what you think it is in many cases. And if you're already familiar with rote teaching and you need some extra reasons to give maybe to parents or to other teachers to justify why you do it, this is going to be great for that. If you need help teaching specific things with specific parts of rote teaching, add your questions into the chat. I would love to help you with whatever it is that you need. Before we dive into the full show, I want your thoughts because we normally have a book club section and we're out. We finished our book, so we need a new book. So I'd like you to start thinking about that now. You can be worrying on it and I'll come back to it at the end, but you can add your thoughts in. We had one suggestion, which was The Little Book of Talent by Daniel Coyle. Maybe that's what we go with, or maybe you have another suggestion you'd love us to cover. It can be something about teaching, talent like this one, working, practice, music, really anything related to what we do as teachers. Even tangentially, I'm totally open to that. So if you have suggestions, add them into the chat and let's get into our news. Sorry, a few technical glitches there. First of all, our snap camera is not working, so let's restart that. I said get into the news, but we actually have to pick our snap first. Oh my gosh, I forgot. Don't worry, we still got our snap camera, which is my funny little thing that we use for the Ask Me Anything section. Aha. I think we're up and running now. Okay, let's try it. So this is option number 1. You have to choose between this. This is VHS. I'm not sure why I chose these today. It's kind of totally random. It's not any particular theme. So we've got VHS. Do you want this one? Or is it too hard to look at those wibbly lines? Or would you like... Don't know what I'm doing today. Or would you like this one? Batman mask. We're going to have a Batman mask, or we're going to have VHS. Vote now in the chat, because this is what we'll come back to at the end for our Ask Me Anything section. And that's where you can ask questions about absolutely anything, so you can type those into the chat as well. So, Batman. Carrie's voting for Batman. Or VHS. I think it's going to be Batman, isn't it? The VHS doesn't really stand a chance to this. Solange voted for VHS, bit of nostalgia. Oh, wait. This is the winner right now. Maybe we're sticking with this one. Let's see how it goes. Oh, it's even Stevens. Keep voting. I'll have to call it in a second, but right now it's slightly VHS. Colin, has to be VHS because I'm the Batman. Well, that is fair. That is a fair comment. Okay, I think it might be VHS. I think it's edged it out. We'll go with that. We can give Batman a try another day. And now, let's get into the news. Okay, so what's going on in your studio this week? I'd love to hear from you. I've been working on a lot of Turbo Boost stuff since we have just 3 weeks left. So if you want to sign up for the Teacher Turbo Boost, which is our 5-day online conference with many differences, you can go to teacherturboboost.com. So I've been doing stuff for that. I've also found a few gems around the internet I wanted to share with you. So first of all is one thing that I have queued up in my brain to play, but I haven't played it yet. So I'm just going to trust that this is great because the last one was great. So Jana and Christina got together on the Beyond Measure podcast Instagram. I think her Instagram is not just Beyond Measure, but Beyond Measure Podcast. So Beyond Measure Podcast, go there and look for her latest Instagram live because it's with Jana. And their last one was so much fun. So let me know if you watch it. If you watch the last one, they did like a repertoire review thing from Masterworks Classics. And this time they're posing difficult situations to each other and seeing how the other teacher would deal with it. So I think it's going to be fun to watch. They're always so much fun because they're full of giggles and I just love it. I also wanted to shout out Amy Chaplin because she had a blog post about her 6-year birthday on the blog, which is pianopantry.com. And she now has a podcast too, so if you're more of a podcast person like me, you can check that out. But yeah, I remember meeting Amy at NCKP in 2017. I have to keep track of these things. And she had just started it. Yeah, that's the right timing, isn't it? So she was like, oh, I feel like the newbie, because she was talking to me and Joy Moran at the time. Those two are good friends, but I had just met both of them. And she was like, oh, you guys have been going for so long. I've just started. And now she's been going ages. She's stuck with it. So I just wanted to give her a huge congrats. Those of you who don't blog, I think can still imagine that it takes an enormous amount of commitment and stick-to-itiveness and determination to get regular, consistent content up. They may seem like little articles, but a huge amount of effort goes into keeping that regularity. So congratulations to Amy. And then lastly, to Joy Moran, who I just mentioned. She had a new post up which was about music notation software, which I thought might be useful to some of you if you're considering like options for students. So she describes MuseScore and the other free options and then the more advanced options, and I just think it's useful to see it all in one place, what she thinks are the differences between them and describing them, which is great. And Joy also needs congratulations because she just announced that she's having her second baby, so that's great. But bizarre because in my mind seeing photos of little Aria was just yesterday. But anyway, not to wax lyrical about other people's Instagram families through Instagram is what I mean. But yeah, great post from her. Lots of good stuff going on around the blogosphere, so lots to check out. On our own podcast, we had an article and a podcast about rote teaching and how it helps students read. So if you like today's show, you would love that for further reading or listening. And we also had a YouTube video about improving sight reading skills in general. So a great foundational one. Perhaps watch that and then go back to last week's live chat if you missed that, and you'll have all your reading bases covered. Or the webinar, if you remember, that would be a great place to go as well. That webinar, I feel like, went even better than usual. There's always loads of lovely comments, but people really seem to get a lot out of that. So if you are a member of Vibrant Music Teaching and you missed last week's webinar, the replay is up. You can watch it, and it's about from beginning reading up to sight reading fluency. So, and the system I shared there really seemed to resonate with people with an acronym, so that's always fun, right? To help it be more manageable as a system that you can repeat again and again. So that's in the training library if you're a member of VMT. And I think that's all my major news. So we're going to dive into our main topic today, which is about rote teaching. So add your questions in right now about rote teaching, how we do it, what it is, anything that comes to mind. Teaching by rote is something that when I was a kid, maybe when I was a young teacher as well, I thought it was just like 2 times 2 is 4, right? I thought it was just that, this mindless repetition, and I didn't think it should be in piano lessons. Actually, when I thought about rote teaching and those words, I was thinking about what I now call accidental rote teaching, which is where students are supposed to be reading, but the teacher plays the piece for them a bunch of times and they just kind of cheat. I mean, they use their ears, which is not cheating at all. It's just another way to learn the piece. But that's what would have come to mind for me when I thought about rote teaching. However, I now know it's a totally different story. So when we talk about rote teaching, what we really mean is teaching intentionally by rote, meaning by teacher demonstration and student imitation. But we do it on purpose, not just as an incidental, not by mistake. So rote pieces are designed to be taught this way. They are highly patterned. They make use of the fact that the student does not have to read them. They're often quite complicated to look at, or they have sharps and flats all over the place on the music, but on the piano, they're easy. And those are the key elements when you're looking for rote pieces. I do suggest, if you're new to this area, that you look at pieces specifically designed to be taught by rote, such as pattern pieces from Piano Safari, Paula Dreyer's series, which is called Little Gems for Piano, or Samantha Coates' Rote Repertoire, which is roterepertoire.com. So that's a little bit about what rote teaching is, and if you have more questions about how to do it and the ins and outs, I'd love to hear them in the comments. But I want to share with you 9 different reasons why we should do it. You can use these to convince yourself or someone else. So if you already know that rote teaching is great and you feel it in your bones, but you need reasons to tell other people, perhaps parents, perhaps students who are a little bit older and questioning your methods, or other teachers, or really anyone else that you feel needs to understand why you're doing it the way you're doing it, then these are great reasons to share. Number 1 is variety. Teaching rote pieces to students allows them to have more variety in the music they're learning. We can explore all sorts of different modalities and keys. We can do a lot more different things, especially with beginners, that we can't do if they're solely reading. And variety is the spice of life, isn't it? Don't we want to learn different types of pieces? We wouldn't want someone to come down and tell us we could only learn one composer for the rest of our lives. Although I'd be curious what your answer would be if you got to choose. Which one composer would you choose if you could only learn one forever? Tell me in the comments. But I don't think we would choose that as an option. So we also wouldn't want to learn one very specific narrow genre. Even if you love Baroque music, imagine being banned from playing anything else. That wouldn't be so great. So variety is absolutely wonderful, and it's even more important for beginners so that they can find their groove, find what they like, explore, learn to play different types of things which require different types of techniques and skills. Number 2 is patterns. Music is patterns, and reading music is based on patterns as well. So when students learn rote pieces, they start to focus on these patterns because those are the whole reason that they work as rote pieces in the first place, is that they're highly patterned and they repeat themselves. My students who have learned a lot of rote pieces are much quicker to pick up on repeated parts in their music, sequences, chordal patterns, lots of different patterns, whether it's written or listening music. They pick up on those, and that is so beneficial for their understanding of all the music that they play. Number 3 is reading. What? Well, this was actually the point in Joanna's article that we published on the blog this week. So you can look at colourfulkeys.ie/blog if you want to read more about that. But reading can actually stem from rote teaching. Students who learn rote pieces can use this as a gateway into reading, and this can really open up reading, especially to students for whom it has been a little bit off limits or very difficult. It could be because they have learning challenges or special needs, or it could be because they just have learned so much by ear, or that's so easy for them that they're reluctant readers. And rote pieces can actually provide a pathway into reading because we focus on those patterns and then we relate them back to the written music. Rote pieces can also teach technique. This is a huge one for me. I love this about the Piano Safari method books, for example, how they use their techniques. Then, directly after a student has learned the technique, they use that in a rote piece. And so the student gets to apply it straight away. The reason I think this is so powerful is because you're not reading. It's because if you are playing a piece that you know from memory, and it's easier to learn a piece from memory actually to do it by rote rather than reading it first and then memorizing it. So if you're then playing a piece without the music in front of you that you just know, it's a lot easier. You have a lot more bandwidth to focus on how you're moving your arms and how you're sitting and all the things we want students to work on in their technique. Reason number 5 is about freedom. This is related to technique, but it is different. If you've ever had students who get stuck to the keys, either they've been working on position-based songs and they get stuck in like a 5-finger position, or they haven't been doing that and they still just get stuck in that area. They don't want to move. I'd be curious to know actually, I've found this to be more common with my left-handed students, and I have no idea why. One of the teachers here is actually left-handed, and I posed this to her and she couldn't think why, but she had noticed it too once I'd pointed it out. So this stickiness to the keys, I don't know, because everything's a little bit more awkward or because there's so much right-hand independence generally required at first, tends to be more common, I think, in my left-handed students. But it does happen randomly with just different students, no matter how you teach them to read or the best approaches you use. So when you teach things by rote, you're getting these students to feel more freedom across the keys. This is one of the main reasons why I would bring rote teaching into lessons with students who were kind of beyond the beginning stages and maybe had never even done things by rote in their beginning. I would bring in these rote pieces to loosen them up and find that freedom across the keys, and also work on keyboard navigation, that they can just find where they're going really quickly and comfortably. Reason number 6 is dynamics. What? Well, again, like the technique, you're much more able to focus on dynamics, listening, expressing the way you want the piece to sound when you're not reading. So yes, those dynamics on the page might seem like a handy reminder, but dynamics in rote pieces can be because the student has listened to the piece a lot of times. They can also just be the student's own choice. And giving students choice over dynamics really helps them to understand why these matter and to prioritize them later on. Reason number 7 is oral work. Now, rote pieces are not play-by-ear pieces. Those are 2 separate categories, okay? So a piece we play by ear, in my books anyway, and definitions are all fluid in this area, but for me, a piece you play by ear is one where you figure out how it goes by listening. And yes, some teacher guidance, but you're not watching and imitating, you're listening and figuring it out. Now, what we're talking about is rote pieces, so we're not having students do that. We are showing them. We're explaining to them. They don't have to puzzle it through with their ears. That's a separate thing and that's great too. But rote teaching does help students improve their ears because, again, without that page in front of them, they're much more able to focus on the sounds they are creating. And they can use tracks at home to try and remember the pieces and work it out a little bit by ear when they forget bits and pieces in the middle. Articulation. So similarly to dynamics, this is an area where students can really focus on the articulation in their pieces, on figuring out how they want it to sound, and really expressing through great technique the way they want this piece to sound. It also, I think, opens up a lot more opportunities for talking about different metaphors and analogies in the pieces and how those would come across through the articulation that we use. And then number 9, probably the most important, although these are not in order, is that they get to play better music sooner. How many of you learned incredibly boring songs, incredibly boring pieces for the first year or 2 of your lessons? Me for sure, and maybe you too. And it's just not necessary. Students do not have to learn boring music when we don't put reading at the heart of what we do. Reading is important. I believe in teaching great reading skills, but I believe we can actually get there faster with better results in the long run if we don't put reading at the core from the beginning. Because when we put reading at the core and we put note names at the core, we end up with things like middle C pieces, which, let's be honest, you try and write something interesting with just F to G in the middle of the piano. Not so easy. But rote pieces, where you can just focus on patterns and creating those wherever you like on the piano as long as you make it easy to play, that's how you create great music for beginners. My beginners learn reading as well, but they have this balance. And they always have these more impressive pieces as well. And by the way, these are the ones they usually do for a recital or a concert or something like that. And they're the ones they'll play for friends and family in the house at Christmas or at family occasions. These pieces are just better. They're just better music in a lot of cases than beginner reading pieces. And so if you let students learn both in the beginning, you don't deprioritize reading, but the two gradually come together to make this great, well-rounded musician after the first few years. So those are my 9 reasons why I love teaching by rote, but I would love to hear yours and to hear your questions about rote teaching. So make sure to add those into the comments. Now, checking with the comments, we had lots of comments about the composers. I have to say I'd probably agree with Chopin. I used to be a Beethoven person all the way, but I think, yeah, that's who I would choose if I had to play one composer. More playable, more variety, more short pieces and long pieces, more mixing it up. And Colin, you're between my 2 choices. Yeah, my teacher would have been Bach for sure. My final teacher, I had several, but my final one, Bach, all the way. That was her great love, and I really didn't understand it at all at the time. I now understand and appreciate it, but still it wouldn't be my choice. Bergmüller, nice. Okay, so Solange, rote teaching is especially good at the beginner level. Yes, I would say that. However, as I mentioned, it is also very useful for students who are further along who have issues of various natures, and a lot of the time for me that's transfer students. So I would be thinking about transfer students who come to me, say having learned pieces off YouTube by ear or using like the flow key things, and they're reluctant to read, or it's just a little bit demotivating to read things that are so below where their playing level is at. And so by teaching them things by rote and then showing them the music and relating the two together, we can kind of bridge that gap, and they can then fly through true reading work much faster. So that's one application. Another is where the student is getting stuck in positions, and so I'm using rote pieces to open them up and to work on that technique. Okay, Liana, great question. How do they remember what to do at home if it is a rote piece? So here's the thing. Most teachers will say, that's not the right way to say this, but a lot of people will give the advice that they have to watch the videos at home. So a lot of rote pieces, a lot of rote books will come with accompanying reminder videos, and even the rote pieces inside Vibrant Music Teaching have them too. So I think that's great, but I think those are a backup plan, not the plan. And so teachers will often get into this issue where they teach the rote pieces, but they're expecting parents to show the reminder videos at home, and they don't. Like, they don't follow through, or they don't follow through consistently. And I think you can encourage that more. However, I don't think it's plan A. For me, it's plan B, and that's why the reminder videos work for me. So the reason they remember it at home is because of the way I teach it, not because of a reminder video, and not even because of the track, although I do emphasize listening to it more with parents than I do the reminder videos. The way I teach rote pieces is key though, and it's this layered approach. So if I'm starting a new rote piece with a student, I'll give you an example. We would do introductions, maybe some improv at the start. And then I introduce them to this new rote piece. They listen to the whole thing. I teach them the first tiny chunk of it, okay? Or the middle chunk if I'm starting somewhere else, but a lot of the time it's the beginning. So I teach them that chunk. And then, unless they find that incredibly easy, I go away with them and do something else. So we do some reading work, we listen to what they're practicing, we do whatever we're doing. And then we come back to that and I say, okay, great, play me such and such again. So let's say it's called The Waterfall. Play me The Waterfall again. Do you remember that little bit? And they try to play it again, or they've forgotten it and I reteach it. If they play it successfully and really with a lot of ease, I would add a bit more. If they don't instantly remember it, or they just get a little bit confused and muddled, I go over it with them. Then, no matter what, we do something else. We come back to it again. You see the pattern that's happening here? So we're doing something else, back to rote piece, something else, back to rote piece. What I'm doing there is I'm giving them time to forget it so that we can build stronger recall in their brain. If you get to forget the rote piece and then remember it, put it back in your brain starts to build this idea that this is something I'm supposed to keep here. So that is really the key for me. Most of my students do remember it when they go home. Now, I do encourage them to play it straight away when they go home. And I especially encourage that for Friday students and Saturday students, because otherwise they'll take the rest of the weekend off, they won't play it till Monday, and they forget. So it really is all about timing for me. I hope that gives you some idea. But definitely get them to listen to the tracks if you can. And if they have reminder videos, make sure the parents do have access to those, but don't rely on them because they're plan B or C to me, not plan A. Hope that helps. Okay, scrolling through for questions. Lots of lovely chatter going on there. Lee, I've not taught by rote. Is it possible to use something like Piano Safari along with a typical method books? Yes, absolutely. I've got two choices for you. I'm going to give you three, actually. Two Piano Safari choices, Lee. So, if you're using a method book that you love and you don't want to switch to Piano Safari as your core method, they do have a method book, so you could switch to that. But let's say you don't, because it sounds like you don't. What you can do is incorporate one of their rote books. They have specific rote books, and just use those pieces with the student alongside what you're doing anyway. Now, the reason I'm giving you two choices is option one is if you would also like to teach the Piano Safari techniques. I do recommend them. They're a wonderful way to teach technique using these animal analogies, and it really works very well with students. So if you're thinking about rote teaching and you want to also think about how you teach technique, then look up, what are they called? Animal Adventures, I think it's the book, but it'll be something like that. It's Animal something on their site. That would be the technique plus the rote pieces that go along with those. If you're happy with how you teach reading and technique, you're not interested in any of that, and you just want rote pieces, then pick up pattern pieces. There's pattern pieces 1 and pattern pieces 2. Those are the rote pieces that are not connected to the specific animal techniques. So Animal Adventures is technique plus rote. Pattern pieces is just rote. Those are your Piano Safari options. If you want something that is nothing like either of those, try Rote Repertoire. That's by Samantha Coates. So it's roterepertoire.com. And those pieces come in levels. They're much more of a rote as a pathway to reading approach. Leading down a pathway. That's why those got mixed up. So those would be a totally different approach, but you can buy like one piece at a time. So if you just want to dip your toe, it might be what you're after. Sam also gives videos where she demonstrates her teaching. Like she gives you teaching tips for the piece. So you can access those, and then there's downloadable scores. So if you prefer to have that on hand in case you forget a bit, if you're not used to this, that's great. And there's audio as well there. Okay. Whoa, loads of questions. This is great. Emily, any tips for teaching rote pieces to adult students? So it would actually be a lot of what I just said, because you're often going to want to incorporate it with something else you're doing. I think the animal exercises work great for adults as well. If you're looking to teach technique as well, look at those Animal Adventures by Piano Safari. Honestly, I've never had an adult student object to them. Now, in Piano Safari for the older student, the authors actually take away the animal names, but even when I have students in that method, I still use the animal names. So I think it's fine to pick up Animal Adventures for them too. And there's great rote pieces associated with those in there. Again, you could use the pattern pieces. I would suggest, though, Rote Repertoire by Samantha Coates is generally a bit more grown up in the styles of pieces. Not all of them, but like some of them are quite kiddie, but most of them are a little bit more sophisticula, than, say, the Piano Safari ones. The Piano Safari ones still sound great. No adult is going to think like it feels like playing Mary Had a Little Lamb. However, the Rote Repertoire has a little bit more of a pop and jazz and rock and things like that slant, so might be more what you're after there. Glad you like that, Colin. That really is the key. That's everything. Every time someone asks about rote, and this came up a lot when people were teaching online, so they were saying it's so much harder to teach rote online, and I didn't think it was any harder. And there were two reasons for that. It was because I had an overhead camera right away, so we all know that's key now. But yeah, I understand why teachers didn't realize that in the beginning. But it was also that I do all this spaced repetition, so students don't forget them with the same frequency that way. Great questions, keep them coming. We're just going to dive into our book club as well to talk about our next book. So we are bookless today, but I want your votes for our next book. So we had a suggestion of what's it called again? The Little Book of Talent by Danielle Coyle. Not Danielle. Daniel? The Little Book of Talent. So that's a suggestion from a member. We will go with that unless someone else has another suggestion and we want to vote. Otherwise, we'll try that one. We'll give it a go. It looks interesting to me, so I don't mind. We had been reading Teaching Piano to Students with Special Needs. So if you haven't checked that out, do. It's a great little book, really short read, really easy to digest because it's full of stories and it's lovely. And I think if you've any interest, which I believe you should, in teaching piano to students with learning differences or difficulties, physical limitations, anything like that, definitely read it. It's a short little read and it's totally worth it. But unless people have other suggestions that come up, we're going to go with that Daniel. Why do I keep saying Danielle? I'm wishing he were a woman. Anyway, Okay, I think we're going to go with that. So we'll have a look at the chapters, maybe read the first chapter for next week. If you want to join in with that, I will leave a full schedule for Vibrant Music Teaching members. I will leave that inside the forums. Okay, so Colin, it's called Teaching Piano to Students with Special Needs. Pretty simple title. It's only available in ebook as far as I know, so it's on all the ebook stores. I have a Kobo, so it's on that. It's also on Amazon, Kindle, all the things, but I think it's only digital. It was by Marianne Froelich, but you'll see it. It's Teaching Piano to Students with Special Needs. Okay, so we'll go with the Little Book of Talent for next week, and let's dive into our questions. So I've sort of answered a lot of your questions as I went there because they were all so specific to Rote. But if you have any random Rote and random questions, let me know. I'm happy to stay on for another few minutes. And in the meantime, I'll just do a little dance in my VHS form, just to be a good sport. The source is not my iPhone, by the way. It's still coming from my camera, just in case you were wondering. I don't know why this dancing, I think it looks 90s to me. So I should be doing the Little Fish, Big Fish cardboard box. Anyone know that? Can't help it. Okay. Question here. Is there anything wrong with marking up the Rote piece's score? After introducing a section, I guide my students through marking repetitions, etc. Okay, so it depends on your reason for teaching the Rote pieces, in my opinion. So I don't do that really in book 1 of Piano Safari as an example. Now it doesn't matter what you're using, but like in a book 1 level, I don't, because I actually want my students to keep those separate. And some of them will just hook onto the reading, and it won't necessarily be that they could read those pieces, but they'll get this idea, especially those kind of perfectionist tendency students, will get this idea that they can't actually do it without the music in front of them. And I do want them to get the freedom of playing these pieces without the music. So I prefer the approach of teaching the Rote piece and then producing the score once they actually know it. And maybe even after they've applied some dynamics and stuff themselves and going, hey, see this pattern, see that pattern. I do like that. I think that's fun. But I'm not such a fan of having it open the whole time if you can avoid it. I don't. That's a really simple answer. Do I do Hanon and Czerny with my students? I pretty much don't. I basically never do Hanon. I sometimes do Czerny. Now where that'll come up for me is with a more advanced, like an intermediate, late intermediate, early advanced student who is doing other things as well, and I need them to have short-term pieces, like that they're getting through a bit faster, to work on technique, to work on reading, and they are not interested in other genres. Like they're quite a classical-minded student. They want to work on exam pieces or just classical pieces, big projects, and so I'll introduce Czerny for that reason more than anything else. But I prefer to teach technique in the beginning through basic exercises and discussion of articulation, and then through scales and pieces, rather than Hanon or Czerny. Emily, when you assign students a Rote piece, do you give them the sheet music for it, or have them just play from memory? No, I don't give them the sheet music. However, in Piano Safari, for example, the pieces actually are in their book. Most of my students never look at it. It doesn't even occur to them. So they are just playing it from memory. Sometimes they kind of have access to the sheet music, but playing it from memory is the easier option. So they wouldn't default to looking at the sheet music. Yeah. I do have some adult students where they can already read quite well and we're doing Rote pieces for other reasons. And I will attach the sheet music in Tanara, as long as it's legal to do so. Of course, I'm thinking of Rote Repertoire by Sam Coates again. So she gives the downloadable sheet music. So I will attach that in Tanara. However, I say to the adult, I'd prefer if you didn't look at this, but there's no reminder video for these, so if you get really stuck, feel free to open it up, it's grand. But try and remember it. And so most of them just remember it, it's fine. They don't open the sheet music once I frame it like that, but they feel better knowing they have it as a backup. Alrighty, I think we might wrap it up there, but that was wonderful in terms of questions. It was so great to hear from all of you. I'm going to go get ready for my webinar for parents, which is happening in a few minutes here. Thank you all for joining me. It's been a blast as always. Next week, we are talking about checkpoints for transfer music students. So, little things to watch out for in your beginning lessons with this student who has previous experience, whatever the previous experience is. What are you looking out for to make sure that you have your bases covered and there's no magical holes that appear later that were always there but you didn't spot them? So that's the puzzle we'll be unpacking next week. Until then, I hope you have a fabulous week. Bye.